U.S. Farm Report on the road from the 50th Missouri Governor's Conference on Agriculture is brought to you by the Missouri Department of Agriculture, celebrating the determination and tenacity of Missouri's farmers and ranchers.
Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. This weekend, the 50th Missouri Governor's Conference on Agriculture, and we're excited to be back. We have Scott Brown, Bill Brooks, as well as Carly Esser-McLean on the program with us this weekend. We have a lot to talk about with commodities, getting into some policy with Carly as well. All right, but let's look at the bigger picture right now. We've seen China come in and start some buying. We had a big meeting between President Biden as well as Xi Jinping. What is behind these buys now that we're seeing from China that's impacting corn and soybeans?
Yeah, so I think perhaps part of what we have going on, Tyne, is that when you look at that Brazilian crop, looks like we're going to be down in corn acres in Brazil. A combination of weather as well as tighter margins, I think is really going to affect planted acreage. So I think there's the Chinese saying, I'm going to need to look for some other markets, so the U.S. may be a good alternative.
Right now, though, I mean, we know the saying, kind of when you look at the rumors and things that are going around, that sometimes it can be a little overdone. And if this is a supply-driven rally or demand-driven rally, that is what you have to keep in mind. So at this point, do you think it is truly a supply-driven or demand-driven rally?
Well, I'm a good economist, so I always say both. But I think very much the supply side, as we look at South America, is driving some of the short-term decisions being made by the Chinese. We want to be careful about getting overly excited about where we sit today. I'm not sure whether we meet the kind of export levels we would have seen in corn and soybeans last year when we think about what's going to happen this year with China. So I think we're a little early in this process, but I think South America and the growing conditions and the amount of acreage that we're talking about on the soybean side, Tyne, we're talking about what's 4% growth maybe in soybean acres that for the last 3 or 4 years has been 6+% growth. So I think the Chinese are seeing what's happening and saying we need to look at some of the other markets, and the U.S. is a good alternative.
Well, some saying this week that this is a goodwill gesture ahead of the meeting between Biden and Xi, that this is just a goodwill gesture with some of this buying. I mean, when you look at this meeting this week, did it actually change the relationship between the U.S. and China?
If so, I think that remains the same. Just like Scott's mentioning, they're looking at what the weather conditions are, the planting progress in South America, and they're attempting to cover potential needs. We have to remember that they're basically in April-May timeframe as far as the growing season, so they still have a lot of opportunity to end up with a fairly large crop. And in weather forecasts, some of these yesterday were kind of leaning towards a little bit of better weather in some of those growing regions. So if the Chinese, that is, start to see a good crop come in from Brazil or Argentina, they're probably going to cancel any orders that they have made here in the U.S. that haven't been whatever and move their business back to South America.
Mexico's coming in as a much bigger player. We saw Mexico outpace China as our biggest importer of U.S. ag goods. Looking at the dairy side, is Mexico stepping up to the plate for dairy as well?
They have been up until September, and then they kind of backed off just a little bit, but that still is a good natural market for us. So I would imagine it's probably just more of a short-term blip in that reduction in exports during the month of September, and that they'll probably start to pick things back up.
Well, Carly, as professional staff at the Senate Ag Committee, I know you have had a plate full as of late, but as we see the continuing resolution move its way through Washington, a Farm Bill extension, why is this something that the House and Senate Ag Committee leaders wanted? Why is it an extension versus a new Farm Bill?
That's a good question. And I think this agreement for an extension on a bipartisan level shows that all 4 corners of the Senate Ag Committee can and have a proven track record of working well together. And Senator Bozeman, the ranking member, feels very strongly that we do need a farm bill and that we need one quickly. But this gives us a little bit more runway because at the end of the day, while we need a farm bill, we need the right farm bill. And we need a little bit more runway to get that policy finalized.
And I know this is a true extension, so policies should stay the same. But we're hearing that things like reference price for corn and soybeans and wheat, we could possibly see an increase there. So what is it within that 2018 Farm Bill that could cause an increase in those reference prices for those crops?
There is a provision in the 2018 Farm Bill called the reference price escalator. But it escalates up and escalates down as well. So it's based on 5-year Olympic average prices. So when prices are higher, we might see a bump in reference prices. But if it is lower, then that escalator drops as well. So it is not a statutory reference price increase, and that shows that we still need an investment in the safety net.
All right, well, we're just getting started with our marketing discussion. A lot to talk about with cattle and a lot more to discuss here on U.S. Farm Report. But first, we need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more U.S. Farm Report in just a moment.